Hey all, Steve from GuitarNiche here. Our job for today is a quick setup on a 2019 Les Paul 60's standard. Freshly refretted with double high jumbos and re-nutted with a good old school bone nut. And we'll get at it. Be right back. I got my bench except for a few tools here. It's nice and clean. We always try to keep a clean environment. So one of our first jobs is a little bit of light housekeeping. This instrument's not very old and it's been taken very good care of. We're going to go around the headstock. See, that was a little bit interesting right there. I'm going to start with that right away. These bushings, these threaded bushings, they should be just snug. Not tight, snug. There's a difference. You go Gorilla tight on these things, you will see blisters form, guaranteed. Okay? The lacquer will start to press out from underneath the over-tightened washers and bushings, and next thing you know, you got blistering. Okay, we want to avoid that. Just and a couple times a year you check it, especially when the instrument's still relatively new. That goes a long way. And of course, the screws on the side, you want the keys to be snug once again. Okay, if you overdo it, same sort of principle. You have the plastic or nylon washer in between the tuner body, the shaft, and in this case, the kidney bean. If you over tighten that, the washer, plastic nylon washer, will split and you'll have metal on metal, and that's no good. Okay, so that's that. These parts down here are kind of nominal in terms of where I think they'll wind up. This guy did not have it top wrapped, so I'm not going to recreate that. I'm going to pop on the bridge. A couple things to note here. For one, the bridge and the tailpiece. Tailpiece, by the way, says advanced plating, and it's really cool. It's light. It's like really like beautiful light, you know. I think that's got a lot to do with the character of the tone. No brainer as far as where that goes and how it goes, but there's a couple different ways you can look at this. Being that it's a ABR1, says right on the bottom, these screw heads should be facing towards the neck. Another way, say if you didn't know any better, or it's a different kind of bridge where you go, I don't know, it's not an ABR, it's not a Nashville, it's like whatever. Another telltale sign is palm wear. If the instrument's been played a fair bit, let's say, you should be able to look at one side versus the other and say, okay, well this side is like, one side looks worn. That would be the bass side where your palm would go. It looks like this has been switched out at some point because it's kind of worn on both sides. But there's more evidence of which way it will be oriented because of this. Now, it's hard to see here, but these grooves here are heavier, wider than the ones on this side. So this is treble, this is bass. Okay, comes down to that. So a little bit of Sherlock Holmes and away you go. And we'll get A string ready, 10 to 46. And do yourself a favor, never hold parts over top of the guitar. Stuff happens, gravity sucks, and you can have a very bad day very quickly. Okay, so I'm just going to use a standard string installation method here. Call it a Z, call it Z, whatever you want to call it. Through the post, give it a quick wind. I don't use a tool because I prefer to do everything hands-on. It's just me. I like to keep things done and organized by feel. Not I've used the machine. Don't get me wrong. I've used the machine. It's fine. It's great. But I get paranoid that All it takes is a sneeze or a split second of distraction, and next thing you know, you got either, something breaks. Let's put it that way. And one of my favorite things that I like to point out is if you're going to do a job, a particular type of job, do it all at once. Batch your processes. While I'm at it, I'll share a couple other tidbits with you, which is it okay to take all the strings off? I have a very, very strong opinion about this, but then again, I'm on this side of the bench and have been since the very early 90s. My answer to that is absolutely. There are very, very, very few instances where it is not advised to take all the strings off. Okay, and one would be certain types of floating systems, compromised instruments, ancient instruments that have to have a load on them or they literally fly apart. All sorts of variations. Now, on to the subject of taking all the strings off. Well, yeah, it's all good. It's like the guitar gets to go to the chiropractor. All the pressure that's in the neck gets to release. In fact, it can be something that extends the life of the instrument. When it's born, it's got a straight back because there's been no pressure on it. And I use the back and neck analogy interchangeably. And as it goes through its life, it should go through a relaxing phase here and there, just to reset or redistribute all the compression that comes from the truss rod. By the way, there shouldn't be much of any pressure on the truss rod to begin with because the neck should support the strings and the pressure as is. The truss rod is simply there for instance or for security or for contingency. But these are modern, relatively modern developments, etc., etc., etc. Our strings up to pitch. I need to set the post height. Which I'm going to do by eye. And I'll do a quick test. Man, oh man. Lots of dig in there. Just on the verge. Torqued back up. I'm looking at balance. I'll give you a measurement in a very simplistic form here in just a moment. What I'm doing is I'm making a quick assessment of the overall condition of the guitar. I'm going to raise the bass side and, at the tailpiece, get this to sit in what I consider to be a sweet spot. Now, normally I would do this in my lap, but I want to, allow you to see some of what's going on here. Okay, big flat blade, no special tool. I just got a nice big flat blade that is non-aggressive on the slot, doesn't mar it or gouge it or anything like that. And what I'm looking for is an angle over the bridge or passing over the bridge that is not like this and not like this. It's somewhere in that sweet spot area, and that would be pretty much it. And I also have the bridges set at what I consider to be its If I have to adjust it anymore, it's going to be really, 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 really small. So I'm comfortable in setting the tailpiece here. And that treble side has got to come up quite a bit. Okay, so what I'm looking at is I view the tailpiece and the bridge from the end of the guitar, and I want to see these stud heads match up with the plane of both sides, or each side of the bridge. In other words, the tailpiece is not sitting like this or not sitting like that. It's in line with the bridge itself. I like to take the tailpiece studs and have the grooves sit exactly perpendicular like that, in line, you might say. And I've checked the relief without getting into a specific measurement, like an absolute measurement. I've done this so many times, I will say it like this. This is between 4 and 6 thou at the moment. Maybe a little bit on the 5 side, so to speak. And while I'm at it, I'm going to adjust the pickups. And these are slots. Now, there's you can get tools and stuff to adjust pickups. Of course, it's one of those crazy things. I used to subscribe. I'll say it this way. I used to subscribe to adjusting the pole pieces. I would create an arc that matched the radius of the strings. I stopped doing that a while ago because I found that during some listening tests, it just looked pretty. Didn't make any real difference in terms of effect on tone or output. I mean, you got to go pretty far to set these things so that they do affect the output. And there's a whole discussion and a lot of literature actually out there on pole pieces, humbucker pole pieces, how they can be raised and lowered to attenuate or improve certain sonic parts of your your output. It's very, I would say it's subjective, but it's also got a bit of science to it. It's going to depend on the instrument, it's going to depend on your signal chain, it's going to depend on the amplifier, the responsiveness, the pickup itself, the output, all that good stuff. So right now I'm just looking at I'm just straightening out the pole pieces. As long as they're not sitting like stupid proud or too shallow, I'll just straighten them out just a little bit, just so they, once again, they look nicey nice. And of course, another point I will try to make about pickups is the distance from the strings greatly affects the output, which also ultimately affects how aggressive or clean or not clean your overall sound is. It's an amazing thing. What I try to look for is, I look at the plane of the pickup holding the strings down here, okay? Because this is going to be the lowest point, therefore this is going to be how close the strings are going to get to the pickup. I want to see equal amounts of space on the treble and bass sides. You can do that a couple different ways. As I said, you can use a tool. I just do it by eye. But what I'm looking for is the tightest point should be no more than 1/8 of an inch. With a Les Paul style guitar, that's what I shoot for. In general, that's what I shoot for. So, and then I'll make an adjustment if it seems unbalanced after the fact. So, and if the pickup is tilted a little bit, once again, like I said, it's the highest point relative to the strings. The other way you can look at this is if you pick a particular angle where you can see the strings reflecting off the pickup, the face itself, you should be able to determine, like, you got the same space or reflection between the strings and the face of the pickup on both sides. So these are usually a no-brainer. They're usually tight. Being that this is again a fairly new instrument, there should be no corrosion inside that jack. The plate itself is nickel, so it's it looks like it's got quite a patina on it. I'll use this. Now Gibson uses a lock washer, so I know that anything inside there is not rotating. Great. Okay, so time for intonation, I guess. But first, stretchy stretch. Stretchy stretch. I'll go through this a couple times. Okay. Tip, any roll in the string passing from one direction to the next, so there's an angle there, okay? The string is like this. What you want to do is get that roll out of there and make it acute. That goes for here, wherever the string changes direction, especially the heavier strings, the finer strings to a lesser degree. Press them into the nut, okay? See, my number 2. It's the little things that'll make the difference. So, you want to have a situation where your guitar is constantly stable, especially with Gibson products, Les Pauls and SGs, things like that. SGs are notorious for having issues with the G and B. Now, to make a point, just for to use the term shits and giggles, okay? I have another video that explores this phenomenon, why the G string sucks, okay, and how to fix it. So we're gonna actually bake this into this presentation here. That's in tune, right? It's in tune. It's a wonderful thing. Yes, it is. What happened? What happened? Wait for it. What happened there? Okay, care to guess? Care to guess? Not magic, okay? I'll do it again. I'm using the G string because it's the most obvious part of the guitar that illustrates this, okay? Perfectly in tune. That's almost a semitone. What we're hearing is heat from the friction of just running my fingers along that string. And then that heat dissipating and the string coming back from slightly hotter temperature back to normalized temperature. This also happens when you play. Some instruments handle it better than others. The cure for all of this is to make sure that this is done properly, that the strings are able to move through the saddles properly, and especially at the nut. 9 times out of 10, you got tuning issues and you know your strings are stretched out and they're installed properly. This is the culprit. The nut needs to be addressed. This is I've replaced so many nuts that are either they're not done properly for one reason or another, wrong material or cheaper material and stuff like that. And without fail, every time the nut is done properly, most of that crap is like a fart in the wind. I am going to address the nut a little bit. It is a fresh cut, so there's going to be a break-in period, and to help accelerate that, I have a little bit of what's left of graphitol. It's a just a special lubricant that was developed by Stevie Ray Vaughan's guitar tech. The lubricant's actually under the string. Beauty. It sounds like a Les Paul. That's pretty throaty. So I'm gonna, all right, I just take a moment to balance this out. You cannot hurt anything by adjusting your pickup height. You're not going to hurt anything, and it's a really interesting way to kind of tweak your own sound. A little bit too much on the treble. That was literally like one pardon me, one turn. Just make sure it's level. All good. Okay. Pardon. Okay, so yes, another stretch. Beautiful. Okay, intonation time. You should be able to see the needle move. This is an old school, very old school analog tuner. It only registers 6 notes total. You know, your basic open strings on a guitar. But when used properly, it is a most brilliant thing. Don't need a Nazi tuner to do a good job. I mean, like a something that's got like ridiculous sensitivity. Because I'll say it like this. Well, actually, I'll give you instead of saying it, I'll give you an example. Let's go for the A, okay? So if we can get that note to, I'll get it to stabilize. And then just by pressing the string, that needle moves like crazy. Thing to keep in mind during this process is use nominal finger pressure. Don't overthink it. Think like, you know, you're just pressing the string. Like don't pussyfoot it. Don't gorilla grip it. Somewhere in the middle, you know, and tinker it, but temper it. Make sure it seems to work for you. Now on to the actual process. I'm using the A string, and I have the 5th fret, and I'm using the harmonic at the 17th fret of the 5th string. I hope you're following all that. Why don't I just use the open string? Because I learned a long time ago the nut has such an influence on the overall sound. Yeah, you can use it for tempering and stuff like that, but to get around any oddness or ill effects from the nut, I do all my intonation on the fretboard, and then I'll temper it after the fact if it doesn't quite sound, you know, the way I want it to, or something seems off. And I've seen this many times in instruments that you think the nut is good to go, but it's actually worn, and next thing you know, you go, why isn't this intonating like with open strings, blah 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 blah. Well, there's your answer, right? And sometimes the frets are not in the right spot. So it's like, you know, half a dozen to one, 6 to the other. But this tends to be a tried and true method for consistency. That is bang on, and that is bang flat, which means scale length is too short. So I'm going to pull that saddle forward just a little bit. And then retune. As long as I get the same registration each time. Okay, and to double check, I'm going to use a B note, 2nd fret, a little on the high side of the 0 point, a little on the high side of the 0 point. There you go, just like that, done. And I'm going to go straight to the D string and do this all over again. That's dead on, and that's dead flat. So once again, we need to bring this up. Now the way I'm going to approach the rest of this is I'm going to eyeball the rest of my adjustments. So bear with me for a second here, because there is a pattern of steps that you should see with a standard electric affair. I'm going to continue with the D string. D string is a bit of an odd duck. Being a composite string, it can get a little swirly, you know. So anyway, in more ways than one, but I'm not gonna harp on that too much. That's great. There we go. And now I'm going to do the G, not the low E yet. You might be asking yourself, why don't you do the low E string? Well, because this is the way I like to do stuff. There's no rhyme or reason to it, just the way I work. Let's tighten that up a little bit. Beauty. And now that was a B note on the 4th fret of the 3rd string, the G string, and likewise an octave up. Now I'm going to go for an A. That's 2nd fret of the 3rd string. Yes, a lot of numbers coming at you, but it's all good. And that'll do. And now I'm going to go 2nd string. That's splitting the difference. Splitting the difference, I'll double check with an E at the 5th fret. Good. Good. And I'll say this before I forget. Sometimes when you start intonation, you'll find that you start going through the intonation process, and you're intonating notes on a particular string, and then you'll start to see them going flat. You go, why are they going flat now? Why? I just adjusted that. Why is the note going flat now? It's because it's heating up. The string heats up and it affects your intonation, especially if you haven't stretched the strings. The strings have full elasticity, and it's an entirely different animal. You got to stretch your strings, and you have to account for certain things. You got to make sure everything is prepped beforehand. And you'll get around these some of these weird problems. Okay, that's splitting the difference in the 0, and that maybe a tad sharp. I think it's just a hair sharp. Okay, low E. By the way, the analog tuner, watching that needle, physical needle, move around is a joy. And I know that'll be done. Give it one more stretchy stretch. Beauty. That turned out just dandy. And that is more or less a done deal. So, from tip to toe, we're good. By the way, I should give a little bit more infos on the amount of relief. I didn't have to do much of anything with the amount of relief because this instrument was refretted literally like a couple days ago. Yeah, it's all good. One thing I want to check before we get into the final phase here, or the very end, you might say. By the way, I'm going to let this sit for a day. Why? Because I'm going to let compression take its, settle in, and that will also include the pressure of the strings over the nut. I did not check the radius. Okay. Oh, okay. Good thing I checked that. Now this will not affect the general setup. I might have to adjust the thumb wheels here a little bit, and then have a second look at the tailpiece. Here we'll move things over. You can treat the bridge just like the nut. You just got to be careful with your tools and stuff like that. I also have an opinion on whether you use a radius gauge on top or underneath. I prefer to use it on top because, for one, getting a radius gauge around all the hardware and stuff like that, it's not really difficult, but it's a pain in the butt. And then you have this T that you got to get right dead center, and you have to finagle. Anyway, the middle strings tend to sit a little bit higher if you go from the top, let's say. And to me, the other thing is, well, that's the benefit in two ways. One is the radius will feel more like it should. In other words, if this is a 12-inch radius on the fretboard, it'll feel like a 12-inch radius on the strings. So there's that match. Now technically, you'd think that, well, you want the underside of the string to match the 12-inch radius. Fine, if you want to do it that way, fine. But you're also giving up a little bit of air that those middle strings need to vibrate. They tend to benefit from being a little bit higher. So it's not a bad thing at all. You always have to have a leading edge so that the string breaks from where it's coming from and then has a defined change in trajectory. Otherwise, you get any flat spot where it's being held at the nut or the saddle, and you'll get the string chattering. That's better. Okay, that's a beautiful thing. String height. The relief is set, the bridge is set, the nut is set. So these 2 points and the relief have been dealt with. So we have what I call this triangle of perfection, you might say. Okay, one is the relief again, one is the bridge saddle height and the nut height. This is a fixed point. Once it's cut, it's more or less done. It's a done deal until it wears or becomes damaged or something like that. But you should never have to touch that again until it needs attention in some way. This adjustable and relief adjustable over seasonal changes. So all that's been taken care of. Where did we wind up? I'm going to take, here's an American quarter. I'm going to pop that at the 12th fret, and it deflects the string just a hair, and that is 0.069 inches or 1.75 millimeters. You can figure out what that is in 64ths or whatever. And what about the high side? Okay, so that's just kicking the penny. Just kicking the penny. And the penny is 0.061. It's pretty flush. I mean, across one side to the other. Meaning, I might raise the bass side just a hair, because I like to have a little bit more air on the bass side. I don't like things exactly the same on both sides. The instrument tells you what it wants, what it doesn't want, you know, that sort of thing, right? And we'll give that tiny torque. Anyway, use coins to, you know, to get yourself some super cheap tools for measuring your string height. And see how these pickups work, okay? Wow, it's nice. Working very nice. Takes a licking and keeps on ticking. Once again, my name is Steve, GuitarNiche. As always, play loud, have fun, have a great day. Read the description below. There's lots of resources down there, free stuff, okay? Get your yayas, all right? And cheers until next time. Thanks for watching. See ya.